showed you just now was just a few of those very famous people who suffer from, well, not suffer, who stutter, and then some, oh, I'm starting to stutter myself, but Bruce Willis, Mark Anthony, they stutter too. But is your children actually stuttering, and are you worried that it could be a bigger problem? Well, do not worry, because we have experts on our show today to talk about this subject. Let's please welcome Lee Kong Meng and Wong Pik Yi, both speech therapists. Thank you for coming on to Bella. Looking lovely, handsome and lovely. Well, very interesting you saw. Did you know that all those famous people stuttered?
Not quite sure.
Not quite sure, but it's interesting to know that famous people, very, very successful people actually stutter. So, but just to let our viewers understand a little better, maybe you can explain, Mr. Lee, what is stuttering actually? It's stammering. What is it actually?
Stuttering is basically when a person has disfluency in the speech, so they have repetition, or they prolong their speech, or they have a stuck in their speech, like a block. They cannot come up with the sound. So that's stuttering.
That's stuttering, like not being able to speak fluently, right?
Yes.
So why can I ask you, Pik Yi, why do people stutter, or why do children stutter?
Well, actually, stuttering is quite common for children aged 2 to 5 years old. This is mostly because this is the time where they're developing their vocabulary quite rapidly. And so they're beginning to use the words in their head to form long grammatical sentences. So instead of saying something like, Mama go, you would say something like, where is Mommy going?
Yes.
So that's pretty complex.
Complex, yeah.
So sometimes for some of the children who stutter, there's a mismatch between the thoughts in your brain together with the words that you want to say from your mouth. So instead of saying it fluently, you might get stuck.
I see.
So some of the children might end up saying something like, where is mommy going? So that is one of the examples of stuttering.
Of how it would sound
exactly.
like.
But so, genetics also has a factor.
Oh, it does?
It does. Okay. So if you have a family member who has a history of stuttering, there is also a risk that your child could have stuttering as well.
So it can be in the genes?
Yes.
Oh, wow. So when children 2 to 5, but how serious can it be, Mr. Lee? I mean, if you see your child, like how you, Pik Yi showed us an example just now of how a child stutter, could it lead to something more serious, or is it just a normal development for a child?
Yes. Usually the children will go through this phase of normal disfluency, but if they persist their stuttering, that means they exhibit some stuttering symptoms and it does not go away, it will turn into stuttering. And then if they persist into school age or teenager, then a bit harder to resolve. So it's better to get early intervention when about 2 to 5 years age.
So that's the common age, because they're learning how to talk. So obviously, like you say, they can't actually put sentences together anyway properly. So what types of stuttering are there? Are there types of stuttering?
I wouldn't really call it types, but more of characteristics.
Okay, what are the characteristics?
So like what Kong Ming said earlier, there are 4 types, okay? One is that repetition of sounds or words. So like I gave you that example, where is Mommy going?
Yes.
Another one is prolongation of sounds.
Oh.
So you might have, that's not so obvious to detect.
Yeah, how does that, could you give us a...
So for example, where is Mommy going? You can hear that there's a prolongation that's not quite natural and you see them struggling.
Yeah.
So that's also something that children have.
Yes.
Another one is called blocking. So the sounds want to come out, the words want to come out, but it's stuck.
It's stuck.
Yeah, so you see their lips visibly groping.
Oh.
Where is Mommy? So that is what we call blocking. That's the more severe type. Now, the least discernible of all these is what we call interjection. So all of us do this at one point or another, is where we fill up our sentences with empty words.
Empty words. Well, I do that.
Yeah, I do that too. It's quite common.
So give us an example of empty words. Like,
so for example, you would say something like, where is Mommy going? it's not fluent, and you've got all the ums and the ahs.
So it's not so much of the but the more of putting in, like you say, empty words inside to actually finish the whole sentence.
That's right, because they know that they're pausing and they want to put words into those pauses.
Wow, so these 4 characteristics you would say is obviously the main, and it's not so, like, see, the blocking is not so easy to detect, but the last one, you would think that maybe, we all do that, we sometimes add in empty words. So what are the symptoms? I mean, basically, like you were saying, but how would you actually detect the symptoms if it's a more serious form of stuttering?
Usually, let's say, if they repeat a sound or a word more often than 3 times or 4 times, then it's quite a serious kind of stuttering. Yes.
As well.
If they just like repeat two times, like my, then it's not so serious. Maybe they just go away. Yeah, but even like the interjection, if the frequency is high, then might be a problem.
Frequency high meaning?
Meanings the person or the child keep having the interjection.
I see. Well, we also actually have a flash to show you guys at home. Let's take a look at the symptoms of stuttering. Let's take a look at this flash. Well, those are a few more of the symptoms besides of what you said, Mr. Lee, earlier. But I saw one, jerking of the head and body. What would that be like?
That is more of like their physical concomitants, where a person or a child trying to help themselves. Okay. Maybe they try to use their physical body to help themselves to come up with the words which they're stuck in. So they will do like moving the head, or there's tension in the neck. In the neck and the body, because they're trying to, it's hard for them to multitask that whole talking together with what they're trying to deliver. Is that why that happens, the head jerking and all that? More of because they cannot come up with the sound or words, so they try to use their body to help to overcome what they cannot achieve in their speech. Well, we actually have a caller, Rebecca from Penang. Hi, Rebecca. Do you have a question for us?
Yeah. Hi, congrats, Bella.
Oh, thank you.
I'm Rebecca here.
Hi, Rebecca.
When should we start worrying about stuttering? Because my child is still learning to talk now. She is 3 years old.
3 years old?
Yeah. Should I start worrying now, or how should I teach her and all?
But can she already make sentences? Can she already speak? How well?
Yeah. Like ma, I want to eat. It's like those short, like word by word.
Word by word. Okay. So your question is, you want to know?
Should I start worrying about stuttering? Because like what kind of, like, how many age like should I start?
I see. Okay.
I'm not sure.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. I think what she's asking...
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the question. I think maybe like her child is 3, and I'm sure she's maybe not making full sentences, which sometimes... I think it's normal, right? Children going through the age of learning how to speak. So for her concern, what should she look out for?
Yeah, I think if there is some symptom of stuttering, that what we mentioned, and if the symptoms persist for a few months, like over 6 months, perhaps the parent should try to consult a speech therapist. To see whether is it a real stuttering, or it's just them trying to learn how to put a sentence together, because that can be different, like you said. When a child is that age, 2 and 3 especially, they're learning how to talk. And girls and boys are different, right? That's right. The development of when they learn to speak. Sometimes girls speak faster than boys. Girls are better than boys. No, I'm just kidding. But when it comes to, like you said, the common age is 2 to 5. But when it comes to boys and girls, who does it
happen to more? Who is it more common to, girls or boys? The
According
percentage?
to research, boys are 4 times more likely to stutter than girls. Yeah, unfortunately, boys tend to be at the receiving end of most of the developmental speech and language disorders. They tend to have a higher incidence of having speech issues.
Why do you think that is? Is it just in the genes, or when it comes to guys?
Partly personality, I think.
Personality.
Yeah, partly personality as well. As one of my lecturers once said to me before, boys, their language development is different from girls. Girls tend to talk a lot. Describe a lot. You know, when we play masak-masak, we're talking to each other, describing how we're doing it. Whereas for guys, boys especially, what are their first games? Guns.
Correct. Cars.
Yeah, so these are not real words. These are more of, just sounds. So developmentally, they do start off a bit later.
They do start off a bit later, which is true, because I noticed, like, my niece, who's a girl, she's talking, she's going like, "Oh, Auntie Wendy, how are you today?" And she's only 3, she was 2 plus, and then a boy would be still like, you go hello, they go like that, and then they start playing with their toy. You know, that it's different, right?
Yes, definitely.
Guys are different. So in that stage, in that case, for parents, how they should know when it comes to boys and girls, they are different, and they shouldn't compare, obviously, girls and boys, because the development stage in their speech learning is different, right?
Yes.
But how would you really define, I know you've already given us the characteristics and the symptoms, really define them trying to learn how to speak to them just stuttering? Like 2 to 5 is quite a big age gap as well, because 2 to 3, they're still quite young. But what sort of age, like after maybe 5 or 6, would you think that parents need to be concerned?
Definitely, if after 5 years old the child still has symptoms of stuttering, definitely the parent should bring the child for intervention. Of course, like for young children, when they learn to talk, they might have some repetition. But the repetition maybe is different from those who stutter, because their repetition could be just a word or phrases. Instead of for those who have real stuttering, their repetition could be more like a syllable. Let's say if we say the word I, then you say I. But children who learns to talk, maybe they repeat a few words together. So I want to go home. That's okay. Quite okay.
Common.
Yeah, that's quite common.
Yeah, I noticed that I want, like because they really want something.
Yes.
I want. So that's not stuttering.
That's not stuttering.
That's not stuttering. That's a child being persistent in what they want.
Very persistent.
Right?
Yeah. So when it comes, how many years have you been obviously doing this? Do you focus more on children or adults as well?
Yes, I'm mainly working with children. Yeah, since my graduation, about 13 years.
13 years, yeah.
From now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we have another caller on our line. Shireen, hi.
Hi.
Hi, Shireen. Do you have a question for our therapist?
Yes, I do.
Okay, what's your question?
Okay, my question is, I have a 15-year-old son, and he has a bit of stuttering problem, especially in front of the classroom, especially during presentations. So I'd like to know what can be done for this kind of situation.
All right. So your son's 15 and he gets nervous and starts stutter when he has presentations in school. Okay, all right. Is that all, my dear?
Yeah.
Shireen, thank you, Shireen, for calling us.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Shireen. So her child's slightly older, but teenagers, and of course, schooling, and I think that's a PMR stage of his life, 15 years old. So maybe, what do you think she should do in that case for her son?
Yeah, I think for 15 years old, if they have not been doing any therapy before, they can try to do some speech therapy to help the person. But the therapy for older children and the young children is quite different.
It's quite different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Picky, do you deal a lot with children as well, or all sorts of stages?
I work with both adults and children, but most of my stuttering cases have been with children. What we normally do for children who are in the school-going age is that we teach them strategies to control the stutter. So, for example, teaching them to slow down their speech, okay? But actually being very specific about how slow we want them to be. So it's not enough to just say, go slow. because how slow is supposed to be slow.
Yeah.
Right? So teaching them strategies like going slow, teaching them to reduce tension when they speak, and also teaching them to, be a bit more forthcoming about their stutter, because when they're in their school-going age, they've got a lot of emotional issues about the stutter.
And of course, it's a peer pressure of all the older students. So we will be continuing our discussion with Pik Yi and Miss Lee, because they will be telling us more on how we can actually parent themselves, and of course, how they can seek professional help. So don't go anywhere, because we have this coming up after the break. That's right. So now that we've gotten a little more depth in about stuttering, we'll find out how we can actually help our kids to overcome this difficulty.
Sit back, relax, and unwind. You're watching Bella Weekend on NTV7.
Touch the road at night, make money and me feel alright. Get the youths, hustle, shine like the stadium light.
There's no doubt that No Doubt is back, and after 11 years, they have finally come up with a new album titled Push and Shove. Well, there's no need to push and shove your way to get this album, because Bella and Universal Music are giving you the chance to win this exclusive album. All you have to do is like us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/BellaNTV7 to find out how you can win this exciting CD. Good luck!
Welcome back to Bella Weekend. If you're just joining us, we've been talking to our experts, two speech therapists who were talking about children who stutter. The common age is between 2 to 5. But when would you know it's a more serious issue? We've been talking about that. And of course, now we want to find out how we can actually help our children, parents, and as well when they actually need to see a specialist. But if you have any questions, do call us at 0355690349. Well, let's please, we have Mr. Lee and Pik Yi. And we were discussing earlier about how if it's a more serious problem, they actually need to obviously seek professional help, right? So ages 2 to 5, you gave us the symptoms and the characteristics of stuttering. So how would you know when it's becoming worse? When should parents know to actually seek professional help or to see a speech therapist? At what stage?
Usually, if the stuttering persists for 6 months or longer, so the parents should seek professional help. And for young children, usually a lot of time we are training the parents to do the therapy itself. We like helping the parents to give feedback to the child about their speech, because although they stutters sometimes, but they have smooth speech many of the time.
Many of the time as well. Oh, okay.
Yes, so we should focus on the smooth speech. We should try parents to praise the smooth speech, and then we occasionally will give feedback on the stutter speech. Through that way we try to increase the smooth speech and decrease the stutter speech.
Which is really interesting, like what you're saying. It's important for parents to know how to help their children, because most of the time they're at home with their parents. Of course, therapy that they don't go every day, right? So Pik Yi, I heard you saw the King's Speech.
Yes,
it's based on a true story about King George, right? It's the Queen Elizabeth's father, actually. And true story, he's a stutterer, right? So how important is it that you actually, in those days, you didn't have help?
No.
Like now. So tell us, why is it so important to, like we would say, nip it in the bud from when they're young?
Well, if you watch the King's Speech, you have noticed that King George actually had some emotional issues as he grew up. And those emotional issues persisted even as he was king.
Yeah.
And so that's why stuttering needs to be targeted when the child is young, or as young as possible, once you know that, okay, there's a problem here, we need to solve it. Because the stutter itself, there are techniques that we can use, but once the emotional issue comes in, once the stigma comes in, how are we going to work on that?
Yeah.
It's not so straightforward then. Then you have to look at a lot of psychological issues and things like that, a whole shift in mindset. So by all means, come and see a speech therapist if you suspect that your child has stuttering.
Correct.
And,
because if not, when they go through their teenage life, kids are cruel.
That's right.
Other children will start mimicking or they make fun. Well, we have Mrs. Koh on the line. Hi, Mrs. Koh.
Hello.
Hi. I heard you have something to tell our speech therapist. Can you tell us what it is?
Yeah. I have my son is already 3 years old, but still haven't talked yet. He only come out the word like not even a word like papa, mama. I don't know what should I do.
Okay, so your son is 3 years old, and he's not actually put any words together yet. Just
not any words. Only come out like like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that, Mrs. Koh.
Okay.
We'll ask well, that's something it's not easy to share, isn't it? Obviously, 3 years old. Is that something to be concerned with? Them not.
What Mrs. Koh is describing is not a stutter, but rather a slow talker.
Oh, okay.
He hasn't developed words yet. Stutterers the usual stutterers, okay, most of them do not have slow talking. They actually have normal language development. What Mrs. Koh has is her child hasn't started to learn how to speak. At 3 years old, her child should be having 3-word sentences, and he hasn't reached that 1-word sentence.
So is it something to be concerned with?
It is something to be concerned about. If Mrs. Koh, by all means, please go and seek for speech therapy so that you can get an assessment done, so that they'll be able to come up with a plan for your child. Early diagnosis and intervention is very important.
Like we were saying earlier. So, Mrs. Koh, thank you for calling, and I hope Pigley has actually answered your question. Very important to start from young.
That's right.
Right. If not, when they get older, it's going to be harder and more difficult. Like I know we keep going back to the King's Speech, but it's a true story on how he really struggled. But he had therapy, obviously, when at much older stage, and they were doing things like him listening to music and all that. So I wanted to ask you, when it's for children, when they're young, how do you actually conduct a therapy in one of the sessions, for example? Maybe Mr. Lee and maybe you can share how you actually conduct it with the child.
Yeah, for young children, usually we use some program, like we try to mostly behavioral kind of program. So we help the child to speak more fluently, and then we try to give a lot of feedback to the child about their smooth speech, just now I mentioned.
Yes.
And also sometimes we also ask the child to evaluate themselves. Ask the child, did you say it smoothly?
At what age can you ask them to evaluate themselves?
Usually after 3 years old, because they understand the word smooth. Or sometimes if they don't understand the word smooth, you might want to explain to the child what this means smooth, what this means bumpy words. Okay. And through that, we train the parents at the same time, so parents have to do that at home as well. We also try to structure the conversation. That means we start therapy from like single words or just phrases. We don't move into sentences, long chatting. No, we start from just short phrases so that the child will have success in a smooth speech. So when the child has success, they will increase their confidence and they want to have more smooth speech.
More smooth speech.
So the behavioral approach is to increase the smooth speech and try to decrease the stutter speech.
The stutter speech. Well, we have another caller on our line. Andy. Hi, Andy.
Hi.
Hi, do you have a question for us?
I want to asking Miss Wong. My child is 8 years old, but she's talking is not so well. But sometimes she's got started with the talking.
Okay.
How we can do the better way?
All right. So your daughter's 8 years old, and she stutters when she talks.
Yes.
Is that right?
But sometimes she's very scared to talk with the other people.
Okay, understand. All right. Thank you, Andy, for your call.
You're welcome. Bye.
So I think, I guess he wants to know. So she's 8 years old, slightly out of the bracket, like the early stage when you find out from 2 to 5. Yes. So I think that, what's your advice for him, P.E.? He was addressing the question to you.
Well, at that age, that's why I said the emotional impact starts to come in. So for her, what I would suggest for Andy is to actually go and see a speech therapist, because the way we determine how severe the stuttering is and what kind of techniques we need to use is by doing an assessment. Correct. So we calculate the severity.
Like diagnosing it.
That's right, because different techniques are needed depending on what the child needs. If she is showing a lot of physical tension, then we need to reduce that tension. If she's stuttering because she's speaking way too fast, then we need to teach her how to slow down her speech appropriately. So, I would actually recommend he go and seek a speech therapist.
She's already 8 years old.
That's right.
Standard 2.
And she's already saying things like, I'm scared to talk, better to go and seek someone
I think it's
for
because
help.
when you're at that age, you're already a little older and you look at your friends around you and they're all talking smoothly. You have that fear.
Yes.
And like you said, the tension, how do we reduce the tension? Let's say in therapy, how do you do it? And then for parents, how do they help their child in that sense? How do parents equip themselves to be... Obviously, it takes patience, I'm sure, especially if parents are a bit like, they don't understand why the child is going through this. How can, let's say, you help them reduce tension? How do you help the parents teach their children to reduce the tension at home?
There are a few methods. If we're talking about physically tensing up the throat and all that, we would actually start by maybe some breathing exercises to release the tension. Sometimes they're speaking with the air from the shoulders rather than from the diaphragm. So you will need to teach them some breathing exercises to release that physical tension. Other ways is to have gentle onsets. So you speak the word gently. Some stutterers, they explode their words, and that's where the problem starts.
Yeah.
But most importantly for parents, always provide them with an encouraging environment. It doesn't matter what age they are. I mean, it's like what Kong Ming said, feedback to them appropriately. Give them positive feedback. They're not stuttering all the time.
Correct.
And even if they do stutter, try not to say things like, no, that's wrong. Why are you stuttering? That's wrong. That's bad.
Yeah.
You're adding to the emotion.
More tension.
That's right.
And that's why when they become adults, even more, the tension builds, the trauma builds, then it becomes more difficult for them. Well, I also want to ask you, Pigly, about the Malaysian Association of Speech and Hearing. Can you tell us a bit about that as well?
Okay, MASH, Malaysian Association of Speech and Hearing. We are a professional body that represents the speech therapists and the audiologists, the people who check the ear, in Malaysia. So we have a directory on our website, www.mash.org.my. So you can actually look at that directory to find your nearest speech therapist. The contacts are all there, emails, places that they work. Because a lot of parents ask, where can I go?
Where can I go? And a lot of viewers at home, I think a lot of them have called us in today. I hope you can actually go there and go online. And for you, Mr. Lee, what's your advice, your final advice to parents out there? Where can they seek help? Of course, besides what Piggy has told us just now.
Sometimes some websites like support group or association, but I mean in Malaysia maybe there's not a lot, but if you go into a website like US, they have National Association for Stutterers, they have Stutterers Foundation. So if you go into their website, you can, or you try to Google their website, you can get a lot of information, get a lot of support from them as well. Yeah.
That's all right. And for you, Piggy, what's your final advice to parents out there?
Well, my advice to parents is that if you really suspect that your child has stuttering and you really want to determine what are the things to do, go ahead. It doesn't matter how old they are. Even if your child is, let's say, 30 years old, there is an 80% success rate with speech therapy. So don't give up hope. Even if you're unsure whether the child needs therapy or not, look, it's better to clear it all up from the beginning rather than regret it 3 years down the line.
Thank you so much, Piggy, and thank you so much, Mr. Lee, for coming on. And I hope viewers at home, it helped to manage to clear any of your, obviously, questions and doubts and about your child. Do seek professional help, get it diagnosed properly. Well, we're going for a short break, but when we come back, we have something that smells quite awesome, I think. Let's take a look at what we have after the break.